Welcome everyone to today's webinar on Global Intelligence Update. Today we've got a very special guest, Liz Hardwick. And Liz is a digital productivity specialist, professional speaker, trainer, and tech founder, and has been sharing her expertise and experience of harnessing digital for human benefit for over 15 years through talks, training, seminars, and her online e-learning platform. Liz helps business owners, leaders, and their teams reclaim their time, energy, and focus with tried and tested productivity methods and digital tools to achieve that iconic 4-day working week. She has also been recognized for achievements in Tech Women 100, Tech Women Top 111, UK Women in the Tech Speakers BCs in 101 Female Founders in Tech and Digital Leaders UK 100. Wow, Liz, what better introduction is there out there?
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome, Liz. And we are so happy to have you here. And I'm so glad you had the time to be here. So on that introduction, Liz, can we start by talking about your journey into studying productivity?
So I think it probably goes back to when I used to work in broadcasting. So I used to run radio stations for a living, and I would regularly be responsible for scheduling. So putting the people in the places and getting everything organized. And at one point I was scheduling 300 people into 4-week rotations on a quarterly basis. So I had to put loads of different pieces together. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together. So I think that's where I got really good at being productive, talking about schedules, talking about planning, using my time wisely. I went down, I was an employee at the time there, and I went down to condensed hours across a 4-day week. So that's where the 4-day work week comes in straight away. I loved that. I got used to Fridays off. I got used to 3-day weekends, and I absolutely loved that. And then a few years after that, I started up my first business with my fellow co-founder, Darren Jenkinson. And then we talked about digital training. So at that time, digital was our focus, not activity. And then we were probably running the business quite successfully for a couple of years. I'm not sure if everyone else will relate to this, but too many hours, saying yes to everything, worrying a lot of the time about things going well, procrastinating over stuff, feeling overwhelmed. And about 2 years into running that business, I hit what I would call wall. Burnout, exhaustion, feeling like I was just treading water. I felt like just wasn't getting much stuff done. I wasn't feeling very productive, and I thought, right, okay, like any person who's running some sort of project or business, we need to find a solution to this. How do we move forwards? So I probably spent a whole year reading every book I could find that said productivity in the title. And then with my digital background, my kind of tech background, if you will, I wanted to find a digital solution. So I downloaded around about 200 or 300 mobile phone apps, tested them, tried them. Yes, there's a lot. I reviewed the number, and I was kind of like, how does that work? And then very quickly I realized by talking to other people had been in similar situations. I wasn't alone. And I thought, actually, this could be useful. So very much we were trainers by trade. So we were used to learning a topic, creating something, a series of programs or delivery, if you will, in terms of training content, and then delivering it. So productivity seemed like the next addition to us. So not just productivity, but digital productivity. And I think there is a difference, because there's a lot of people that talk about time management. And I'll be honest, I feel like that's stuck in the 90s a bit. So digital productivity is the next step on from that. And because of our digital backgrounds, that felt like the next natural step. Roll forward 10 years, I'm now speaking at conferences about digital productivity. We run training courses, we do one-to-one private support with people, coaching, mentoring, all of that good stuff, based on the fact that productivity is part of the offer that we think is really important, especially to business leaders, entrepreneurs, because there's that struggle to keep that balance. So we've kind of gone, that's the whole potted history really, but you can see there's points throughout my professional career that I was always using productivity techniques and skills to be able to achieve things. I think we all are. And I think I wouldn't say anyone's not productive. I think there's just always room to improve, room to increase by a small percentage per time. That's what we're dealing with in a lot of cases with business owners, entrepreneurs, is how do we get that extra 5% more productive? Because we're probably already productive, but we're always seeking new ways of doing things. And I think that's where, where we can help in terms of supporting other people.
Sure. Yeah, talking about these challenges, what would you say are the most common challenges that you see in entrepreneurs?
So I think I've probably been speaking on digital productivity topics around 7 years now, and I've kind of grouped it into 3 different sort of sections, if you will, 3 different problems and 3 different solutions. So those are time, energy, and focus. And for business owners, entrepreneurs, the underlying theme with that then is money. So with time, you're not doing a 4-day week. You're struggling in terms of fitting everything into your week. You're probably doing 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week. You're doing long hours. You're getting up early. You're finishing. You're stretching yourself to the limit. They're the challenges that time-wise entrepreneurs will find themselves in. Energy-wise, lacking in energy, exhausted. Lack of momentum, lack of inspiration when you started. Maybe your most recent business, you were really excited and now you kind of feel like you're going through the motions. It might not be that actually there's anything wrong with that business idea. It's just that you're exhausted. You've taken too many things on. We would call it spinning too many plates. So you're kind of trying to juggle things all at the same time. And then add on to that, you might also have family, you might also have dependents that you're supporting, all of the life that balances out that business side, where we talk a lot about business side in entrepreneurship. There's also got to be that balance as well. And then that third element is focus. So when you are getting down to doing work, you're distracted by other things. You find focus quite hard. There's too many people pulling you in different directions, especially if you've got multiple businesses as well. You can find that you're actually being pulled in lots of different directions.
Wow. I think that's a very common challenge for everyone out there, is being overworked and, like you said, taking on too many plates.
And that's it. And I think, we all enjoy what we do and we choose to do those things. So it's not like we've been told to do certain things. We can get to pick and choose the companies we want to run, the projects we want to be involved with. And so, some people will say you can't have everything. And I would say, well, you can, but you just need to be really savvy about how you spend your time. Yeah. And, that then lends itself to talking about things like outsourcing. If you're doing a lot of admin and you don't want to be, or you don't have the time to, or you're not the best person for that, is that someone you can bring in or outsource? There's that piece as well that I think we're probably all quite used to doing. And that is a productivity technique as well. Yeah. If you don't have that time to do everything, what bits can you get rid of that you're not so fond of? Because, whatever we start a business to do, normally it's not the business bit of what we want to actually deliver. And then that just comes along with running a business. You realize you need to, do finances and admin and all that sort of stuff. If that's you that's doing all of that, can you outsource it? Can you get someone else to help you with that so that you can focus on other stuff? So there's lots of struggles, but I think that's part of it, isn't it? Part of entrepreneurship is we want to kind of create something new. So how do then we go about making something a little bit different?
Yeah, very interesting. Liz, then what differences should an entrepreneur expect to see if their productivity is improving?
Um, I think there's lots of different ways. I think it's flipping the challenges on its head, to be honest. So I would say someone who is doing the hours that they would choose to. So I work with quite a few entrepreneurs on a private basis. Some of them do a 4-day week like me. So I work Monday to Thursdays. But others, the 4-day week has got a bit of a global kind of recognition at the moment. People are talking about that within the business communities.
Yeah.
But it's about it being flexible for you. So I have one client where she likes to get up really early. She's an early bird. And she'll get up 6 a.m. her time. She'll do her emails, she'll do some admin, she'll do some basic stuff to ease her into the morning. Then she'll maybe do that for a couple of hours. Then she'll go for a swim. She has a swimming pool in her house. So she'll go for a swim, have a breakfast, have a nice leisurely morning, and then start work around 1 p.m. And then 1 p.m. to say 5 p.m., she's doing work, she's meeting her team, she's meeting her clients and working on the business. And then she'll say do a 5 till 7 break where she has dinner, she relaxes for a bit longer, and then she'll do another hour where it's more creative time for her. So 7 till 9 will be her time to do business planning or write. So she works in change management, so write funding bids or project proposals. Because actually, what she's figured out is that's her perfect day. Yeah. And she doesn't mind working 5 or 6 days a week because she's spread that out. She enjoys the balance. So I think one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs can see in that impact is, are you living a life that you really love, that you really enjoy? Yes, business has got its ups and downs, but if you look at your perfect week, and that's it's a great tip to share with everyone. If you haven't ever done a little drawing, pen and a piece of paper or digital calendar, and figured out what you'd love to do and when in a schedule format, do that, because that's a great way to be able to say, this is my perfect day, and then look at what your current day looks like and how different are the two. So I use Google Cal for my calendars. I created a new calendar. I created my perfect day that I'd love to have. And then I toggle that on and off and go, how close am I to this style this week? Yeah, brilliant, Dominique. It's a really simple way just to keep contrasting from what am I wanting to do, what am I wanting to achieve. And within entrepreneurship, there'll be times where you are super busy and that isn't going to happen, and that's okay as long as we have that thing to check back into. So for me, November, December time gets quiet in terms of delivery. So we use that as an opportunity to do business planning. Or at the moment, I'm doing lots of early mornings for lovely global interviews and conferences. So I'm up really early my time. I'm then choosing to take the afternoons off because that's that flexibility, because I have done maybe the hours that I chose to, but balancing out that perfect week. So my perfect week would be getting up a lot later than I have done this week. But it's that balance to think, like, how can I make this work for me? I'm not going to get my ideal perfect week this week, but how can I make it as good as, or how can I be flexible with that? And that's an element of what we will all be used to as an entrepreneur, is being flexible and moving with projects and time zones and time in terms of what we're working on. But that impact, I think that time, and it just go back to that time, energy, focus. We talk a lot about that. And that's a big piece is, are you enjoying what you're doing and when? and then the focus and energy generally goes with that. Are you feeling like you've done a really great day, and then you can choose to do something in the evening personally for that work-life balance? Or are you absolutely zapped and you don't want to do anything else, and you just want to sit down and watch TV and do nothing else? Then the energy levels are, are probably out of sync there.
Oh, wow. No, that sounds like a great activity that we can all try. And, I think we should actually do that. Then I've got a question for you, Liz. Now, you get this quite a lot, especially in the digital space. Why do you think the digital plays such a big role in the productivity?
Yeah, good question. So I mean, I'm biased because I've always done digital or broadcasting or tech in some regard. And my businesses have all moved with digital. So whatever the latest technology is, we've tried to keep abreast of it. I think digital is, if you think of it as one of the tools in your toolkit that become part of how you do business. So productivity in itself is, yes, we can talk about the age-old days where we talked about time management. So I've mentioned quite a few examples of how we use our time more wisely. I'll talk about the time, energy, and focus again, because that's part of productivity. There are some things you could still do without digital. So you can choose to manage your time more wisely with a paper diary. So some people are really, they find benefit from having a paper diary. So that's fine. I'm not going to try and persuade people who have already got their systems and they're happy with them. For that example, so if people are using paper diaries, there are lots of somebody saying that's me. There's lots of systems that you can utilize the processes without using digital. So that's fine. With the perfect day, for those of you who are on paper, it's just little post-it notes. So you do all the things, you put each item on a post-it note that you want to do, and you put it on your paper calendar instead. It's harder to move around. It's much easier to do that in digital. And I think digital then becomes the time-saving tool to help you do those processes. So we've got the time element of it. One great example is if people haven't heard of the process called Pomodoro, then please go search for that. That's the best process that I've ever used. And again, I've tried and tested many. And the concept being you pick a particular task, you choose a single focus, 25 minutes worth of time. You can set an alarm, and I'll say that in inverted commas, because that alarm could be where the Pomodoro word comes from is tomato, Italian for tomato. It's the tomato kitchen timers that you might have seen around the 80s and 90s, for those of you old enough. And it's an iconic ticking kitchen clock. So you would set your timer for your pasta, you'd put 10, 12 minutes on, and it would tick, 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 and then it would ping at the end when the timer was finished. So in its example, that can be non-digital at all. So we've just picked a timer. It could be we go a little bit further and use digital and put a timer on our phones for that 25 minutes. So that's like the basic next digital step. Or if you've got a digital clock that you use, then that's again using a little bit of digital, but we're moving away from the analog. And then for me, digital tools and apps. Oh, Dominique's mentioning Time Timer. My favorite app and program is called Pomodoro. And I think that's where we start to see why digital is much more useful timing wise, because Pomodoro, it does the same thing. It sets a timer, it will ping at 25 minutes, and then you have a 5-minute break and it'll ping at the 5 minutes, and then you carry on. And then the concept of Pomodoro is you do 4 of those and you have a big break. However, Pomodoro app, and this is where the digital bit, where we talk about automations and integrations, this is where digital becomes really useful and time saving even more, because Pomodoro, as an example, integrates with a lot of other systems. So it integrates with project management tools, it integrates with task management tools, it integrates with other systems that you could link your Pomodoro to. So, little quick example, I might say, okay, I use the to-do list app called Todoist. I link that with my Pomodoro app. And when I'm ready to sit down and do some work, I'll sit at my desk, I'll get my laptop out, and I'll say, right, I want to focus on this particular task, and I want to set a 25-minute timer for it. When I choose Side Pomodoro, I can pick the tasks direct from my task list in Todoist. That's where the integration becomes really useful. So I've just saved myself. And if you think about it, it might only be 30 seconds every time I'm going into my task app, saying, yes, I've done it, coming back to Pomodoro, choosing a different time. But if you think about every day you do that, it can add up as minutes. And across the week, if you're doing that, can add up as, maybe an hour's worth that you're then saving. So I would say just by linking that particular set of programs together, I'm probably saving 20 minutes, maybe across a week or 2 weeks. So that's where, again, we're starting to talk about just trying to increase our productivity by a couple of percent. How can we do that? Digital then means that we can do that, and it automates it. So to finish that process off, once I've chosen my task from my Todoist app inside Pomodoro, I've set my timer, I've done my thing, I can then say inside Pomodoro, tick, I've done that. I mean, it'll automatically tick it off in my Todoist app. So it's time saved again. Instead of me having to keep flicking between systems, it's then given me a task to do it that way as well. And that's just one example. There's so many tools now that integrate. So that might be marketing systems where you're scheduling things and you're linking things together. It might be CRM systems where every so often they're sending out emails for things. I mean, if we think about how much time that's saving us not doing that manually, that becomes a really useful digital productivity tool as well. We start talking about the time, energy, and focus element, but it could cross loads of elements within your business as well.
Wow, awesome. Thank you for sharing some insight on that. Getting back to the changes, I want to ask, what are the small changes that you see that make the biggest difference from implementing on your advice?
Yeah, so in the chat already, we've been talking about how people have their own systems already in place.
Yeah.
So we use the example of an analog real world pen and paper diary. So that's a great example. So we use that one. Small changes. So I'll give you an example. I used to use a paper diary. We're probably talking about 20 years ago now, but there was a transition period. So I had a pen and paper diary. I then struggled to move over because I think I was trying to jump too quickly. And in this situation with any of your processes, you might have to take baby steps in it. So some of those challenges, if you think, oof, like going from, I could never go from a paper-based diary to a digital because it seems like too much of a shift. I would suggest it's starting smaller steps to creating a habit. And habit comes in a lot into this. So my example of when I changed over from a paper-based system to, at the time, it was called a Palm Pilot, which wasn't even a mobile phone. It was a very classy personal digital assistant. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but it was the height of technology at its time. But for that 1 year, I had both because I didn't trust the digital. I still had the paper. So I was running, and you have to give yourself a cut-off time for how long you're going to do this for, because I took a year and said, right, I'm going to commit to for a year running both and checking that it was working. So that's quite a big period of time to test something. But little steps for other things might be you give it a month to test something, you'll give it 3 months to test something. Small changes where you're testing something different. So for the paper system, doing your perfect day on that with post-it notes. So a great productivity example that you can use, again, around scheduling, because I think scheduling is the thing that if you're not ready to change your systems yourself, scheduling and using your schedule better has so much benefit. So I would say that's the first thing to look at if you don't quite know where to start. The scheduling element, you can do this with paper and you can do this with digital, but one of the biggest things I see with so much positive impact on business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs is time blocking. So this is where we might look at our week. So I generally do this like Sunday afternoon in a coffee shop, all relaxed, planning a week ahead. This might be that you're doing this first thing Monday morning, looking ahead. So looking at the whole week that you've got, looking at your appointments, looking at the fixed things you've got in your calendar that you can't move. So generally they're appointments or meetings or Zoom calls or having physically to go somewhere. Then look at your to-do list for that week and look at where you can slot in the times for the tasks that you've got. Because I think sometimes where we struggle is having here's a calendar of all the things I need to do in this week and giving ourselves an unrealistic task list for the week because we haven't actually allocated the time to anything. So time blocking is great because then you're going, right, this task is going to take me 2 hours. Where in the week am I going to slot in that time? And then put that into your calendar or your diary, label that accordingly. And that's the time you're going to focus on something. And you learn over time what your types of focus are. There's a thing called chronotypes, if anyone's ever heard of that. You're one of 4 animals. So kind of traditional to the early bird or the night owl. It goes into a bit more depth with 4 different ones. So there's a great tool called the power of whenquiz.com. And that will give you an idea of what chronotype you are. That will explain when is the best time to do things. So when is it your best time to be creative? When is it your best time to just do admin stuff? So there's a lot of balance there in terms of when to do things. And that's, again, really just increasing your productivity by maybe 5% or even 10% for that, because that is actually quite an interesting revelation if you didn't know that about yourself already. And so I think time blocking, I think also not adding too much stuff to your to-do list each day. Dead simple, might be digital, might be pen and paper. I say 3 tasks a day. What if I achieve nothing else? What are the 3 tasks that are really important to do that day? I think that really helps because we overload our to-do list and we just feel like it's never ending. And then I guess a final kind of small step on that is doing a weekly to-do list if you didn't already. So where we have a master to-do list with absolutely everything on, pairing that with doing the scheduling, looking ahead for your week, but also having a weekly to-do list. There's a quote that says we overestimate what we can get done in a day and underestimate what we can get done in a week. So that balance of when we're going to do stuff really helps. And they're all little tips that you could just add in. You could just try one of those little things each couple of weeks, each month, try something different, and you'll just see that productivity increase. It might be you've got a bit more focus. It might be you've finished your work and you can kind of be done for the day. Like, oh, I've finished. It's 2 p.m. Let's go have coffee or lunch. So those little impacts can really build up. But I think pick a couple of tiny steps first. Because all of those, the schedule or the to-do list, are the ones that will make that biggest difference, because it's sometimes it's the processes that we do that we're just taking for granted. And it's worth looking at and reviewing the processes that you have, the tools that you use. We always suggest that at least every 6 months, you do a kind of digital productivity review. What are you using? What are you using and not paying for? Because that can be a money saving thing as much as the time. And just looking what you're doing. Could we scrap some of these things? At one point, I reviewed our systems. I was using 4 different pieces of software, which then eventually we just converted into using 1 piece of software, because we were doing 4 different jobs, 4 different bits of a process, when actually if everyone had access to the one thing, we could just all use 1 tool. And I think sometimes we're creating more work for ourselves just because we've not had the time to sit down and think, right, what am I doing with this? And how could I better optimize it? So there's some of the small things that I think, can really make a difference.
Yeah, no, very good advice, Liz. And I think Mike can also testify, because just before lockdown hit, he did the exact same. He did just a review, all the software, what is he using, and also cut down on so much actually that he bought a car. So
Brilliant. So that's it, isn't it? That's how much you realize you're spending, and especially if you might have signed up for a trial and then the money goes out and you don't really check. But then actually, if a couple of those get cancelled, if it's enough to buy a car, that's brilliant.
Yeah, Liz, we've been talking a lot about change, and for some of the listeners, they might be thinking, oh shit, change, what advice would you give to those who are worrying about changing the way they work?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when, and it's one of those where you get into business to do the thing you want to do and not do the business stuff. Yeah. This can also sound like business stuff. So I think it's putting your central priorities in the middle. Like, what do you want to do? So the ideal day example is a great one. Where would you like to be? What lifestyle would you like to lead? And then working towards that. It's tiny steps for me. Not trying to change major things. Sometimes we can all get stuck. I became quite risk averse during the pandemic, especially with my business, making business decisions. I think we can get stuck with decision fatigue sometimes, where we have to make so many decisions as entrepreneurs that then we actually stop doing anything. So I think the change piece, if you're worried about changing stuff and you're thinking, oh, but if I make the wrong decision, that actually could make the systems or the processes that I'm using worse, might actually take more time. It's using an expert. So if you don't have time, or you don't have sometimes it's you don't care, you're not interested, or you don't have the skills to look at the systems with a kind of a separate eye. So it might be someone. So the great example that you shared around Mike doing that review, maybe that's a great place to start. So if you're worried about change, it's a great place to just understand, where am I up to right now? So that might be you do a review, or if you struggle in terms of understanding what that might mean, maybe getting someone in to do a review. Trying to find someone who is technology agnostic. So we're very specific, and we don't recommend one particular product. And I think that's really key for entrepreneurs, because a lot of the time we need to work agile, we need to work quickly, we need to be able to easily change things if we choose to. So I think get a review done, either you do it or someone else does it. See where you are. And I think those little changes, like cancelling a program that you don't actually use, I mean, that seems great for your time, for your energy, for your focus, but also for your money as well. Again, we're always talking with productivity, the bottom line, because the more time you save, the better your bottom line will be. More energy you have, the better the bottom line will be. The better focus you have, the better the bottom line will be. So it all links back into money. And I think that's where sometimes the teams that I work with, so I work with leaders and their teams, the teams don't understand why we need to do something. And that change piece can be a struggle sometimes because the leader hasn't got buy-in to why we need to do this. Actually, guys, if we figure out what a system could be better doing, we can save money, so we'll have more money for you. So I think that's explaining sometimes, like, why are we doing this? We're not, because I think a lot of the time also, if you've got teams and you start to talk about change, especially in the current climate, especially globally as well, there's an instant jerk reaction of they're going to try and replace me with computers. And it is a big worry for some people. So it's also explaining the changes that you might be making to your teams and your businesses to say, hey, no, this isn't getting rid of anyone. This is actually seeing we can all work better and, you know, all be able to take Fridays off. There's a lot of companies now that are actually doing a 4-day week. But to get to that, they've had to do small incremental changes to make that possible. So implementing digital systems is a great one, because if you can see there's a lot of admin process or a lot of manual process that actually could be automated, let's do that, which means we free up our people to do the more human-based tasks rather than the tappy into a computer. Yeah. Which really, do we really need an intelligent human being to do that, where they can be checking that system and then going and doing other things like customer service or other people-sided stuff? So change to review, have a look at what you've already got, what you're already doing. Make sure you explain change to you and your teams and why you're doing it to, you know, alleviate any problems or worries. But also bring everyone around with that discussion, because if you have got a team member that's working on a system day in, day out, and they're like, oh, it's rubbish because such and such, I've got a solution. This program over here is so much better. If you ask for opinions and feedback, you might not need to necessarily do the research yourself. Your team might already have the answers. And I think sometimes it's also about going and asking for people's feedback. But yeah, change is a scary thing anyway, right? As entrepreneurs, we're used to that. We're used to working agile. So yeah, tiny steps, but then also, you know, replicating and explaining what those reasons are that you're changing.
Wow, great answer, Liz. Thank you very much. And I've been asking you quite a few questions, and you've been giving us quite a lot of insight and great advice. Now, I would like to ask, how do you support the entrepreneurs on their journey? For those that don't.
Love it. So we have quite a few different levels that we engage with people. So we can work with leaders, entrepreneurs, and their teams. So especially since 2020, there's been a massive move to remote working and hybrid working. Yeah. And for teams, that seems to be a key bit at the moment. So we do training for that. Again, we talked about change. That might be buy-in. So we run training sessions for leaders, entrepreneurs, and their teams. So that's a wider conversation. We also work one-to-one with entrepreneurs. So it might be, I've literally got an email in my inbox from a client from yesterday saying, I need some help. I'm trying to run 2 full-time roles under part-time. So she's doing 2 part-time jobs, which actually are a full-time role. So she's trying to do that. She's getting overwhelmed and she needs some support in how to actually focus, refine her time. And a lot of the things we've talked about today here is exactly what I'll help her do. So I've thrown a load of ideas at people today. What we do is then we support people to make that change. So we talk about change being scary. Sometimes it's really good to have an expert, a specialist to hold your hand going through that process, figure out what their needs are, and then be able to support them that way. So we do one-to-one private support with clients, with entrepreneurs, with CEOs. And then we have an online learning portal. So if you want to dip in and out, or you just want to learn at your own pace, we've got an online learning platform where you can kind of buy a course. Each one's 4 weeks, and then you get to keep the info for the lifetime access. Then we do some free stuff as well. So we have a free virtual online co-working, mostly every month, where people can get together and on a Zoom call can just get on with stuff. But that accountability, I think, especially if you're working on your own a lot of the time, that accountability can be really helpful. And I know by just joining a Zoom, and we use the Pomodoro method I mentioned before. So we work in 25 bursts of time, 5-minute break where we chat to each other, we set our next task, and then we carry on. There's a little bit of music in the background. We see everyone on the cameras. And I get so much more done in those sessions, and that's free. Anyone can join that. And we put those on Eventbrite for anyone to log on to. And it covers most time zones. So we try and keep it as accessible as possible. And then we have a free Facebook group. We have a free email list. And we also have a free online book club, which is normally around a productivity book. So I mentioned before about reading all of the books that had productivity in the title. I've done those, and now I'm always currently seeking out other sort of productivity or personal development books as well. And we do that online across a whole day in a Facebook group. So all time zones can pretty much join us. And we read a book together pretty much every other month, because a lot of people have got a lot of stuff going on. So lots of ways that we support entrepreneurs in different forms and for different cost prices as well, because we appreciate everyone's at different points on their journey and might have different budgets to work with.
Wow. Well, that's great, Liz. That's awesome. And I see there's no question. So you must have explained everything so well. No one has any questions.
I mean, if anyone's got any questions about particular, specifics in their business that they find kind of challenges, or I love being able to recommend a good app as well. So if people are kind of, I want to find an app that helps me do X, the kind of 300 that I downloaded over the years are I've kind of tried and tested different things, but there's loads of other different productivity techniques as well. So I mentioned Pomodoro, which is my favorite, and I use that as a good explanation of how I got to my 4-day work week within my business. Yes, I was able to do it as an employer as condensed hours, but for me in my business to go from working 7 days a week, all hours, to actually just thinking, right, I want to work a 4-day week. Pomodoro process was the process that enabled me to do that. But there's also loads of other ones. So if that one doesn't work for you, I highly recommend the getting things done method, where the concept is that if you can do something within 2 minutes, or I would say 5 minutes, then do it there and then, rather than adding it to a to-do list. Because actually what you've done is you've snowball affected a task and made it a bigger thing than it really needed to be. And then I'll recommend this one, but it isn't one that I use because I've tried it and it doesn't work for me based on my chronotype. But if anyone's heard eat that frog. So the concept around that being, you do the big, ugly, chunky, been putting it off for ages task, and do that first thing, do that before everything else, because then actually you think, right, well, if I've done nothing else today, I've got that one big thing done. So that's definitely worth checking out as well. It doesn't work for me. Generally works for like super early morning people, because they want to get ahead of the day, and so that normally fits in. It's a great process. Again, with any of these, try it. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. So that's what I did with that one. So I'd still recommend it, but I don't personally use it myself anymore. I've tried it, doesn't work, moved on to other things. So it's a great kind of process to go through as well, to kind of, have a go at something and then move on if it doesn't work.
Oh, awesome, Liz. Thank you for sharing that. some more amazing insights.
Oh, seriously, Chris, I could go on all day. Anyone got any other questions then that's joined us? Anyone? Oh, thanks for sharing the website in the chat as well. There's also I've got for productivity stuff. There's also my personal website. I've got a few blogs on there. So I'll bob that in the chat as well. And then our e-learning course can go from anywhere as well. So it's elearning.digyenable.co.uk. As much as we're based in the UK, we work globally as well. So when I do speaking at conferences, I travel around the world, and I can also do it virtually as well. So training, things like that, anything anyone either thinks I need a bit of support myself to do that, or knows of someone. I think sometimes it's a recommendation or a referral as well, that just people are thinking, oh yeah, I could do with a bit of productivity support, think of us.
Awesome. Oh, great. Thank you, Liz, and thank you for attending and being a guest on our webinar. And also thank you to all the attendees listening. We appreciate it. Have a great day ahead. And Liz, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone, wherever you are.